I welcome all the students from all over the country for this very unique session. Actually, I have never seen anybody teaching diplomacy at such a stage. I was expecting that I will be teaching diplomats, not diplomacy students. Anyway, we'll go to that later on. Feel free to ask me questions anytime you like or during the Q&A session. So my topic is countering terrorism and radicalization. What I'm going to do is I was tempted to write jihadism, not terrorism in per se, because what we are encountering is something bigger than the classic terrorist threat that we saw before the Cold War, after the Cold War, or even sometime until 9/11 almost ended. So how did this thing changed its form, its message, its manifestations? Why did this happen? Is it happening only with one community in the world, or is it happening all over the world with all other communities as well, or many other communities as well? So I will throw you some, basically my intention is to throw you some questions or rather puzzles. And I would like you to hit me with questions that why did you say that? Why did you say that this is this, whereas our understanding is this is that? And basically, I'm not going to take any position for any country in the world. My topic today is purely academic and purely for the purpose of your understanding. It may be my wrong understanding from your perspective, but my perspective, it is only for your understanding of this situation that we are in, how to mitigate that threat, and how do we bring back the world to normalcy as far as the threat of political violence is concerned, not about terrorism. Terrorism will always be there, believe me, whether you like it or not. It was there when I was a child. We are getting old, basically, and it will be there all the time. So let's start. Where is terrorism today? If I would have been in a class, I would have asked someone else in the class to raise his hand and tell me this question. But then if you have any issues with my understanding where it is today, you can ask me during the Q&A session. There was much hype about Al-Qaeda, 1990s to 2000. And then from 2014, it was about the Islamic State. I hate to call it Islamic State, but some scholars try to persuade us to call it Islamic State. Otherwise, I would like to call it Islamic State of Syria, Iraq and Syria, from where it met up. It was initially Islamic State of Iraq, then it metamorphosed into Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, or simply some other name, not Islamic State. If we call a group Islamic State for the people who are believing in its ideology, they are automatically persuaded to believe that this entity, this group, has created an Islamic State, which is basically the dream of every Muslim. There's nothing wrong with that Islamic State concept. Islamic State is not necessarily a autocratic state or whatever, but it is if Islamic principles are implemented in a particular geographic area with honesty and with dignity, with fairness, is nothing bad about it. And I have seen that in many parts of the world, especially in Indonesia, which is a country which has the largest Muslim population in the world. I have seen that in Philippines also. Nothing wrong about that. People do believe in Islamic states. In Malaysia, people do believe in Islamic state. They do believe in Islamic principles, and governments allow them to believe in Islamic principles. There has been no conflict, practically no conflict with Islamic state principles and civil law principles. And there are numerous examples in many parts of the world. So nothing wrong with Islamic State concept, but Islamic State appropriating a concept for their own benefit and misusing it, which is actually Islamic State of Iraq and Syria did for a long time, and that actually brought its demise, is the difference that I would like to make. Then we have also decline of terrorist organizations. This is something which many people miss, but not necessarily people have not written about it. I know I wrote an article in 2008 or 9, Do Organizations Matter? I did a case study of Mumbai attacks. Some people said, somebody like Mark Sedgman, for example, a American scholar, ex-CIA operative, and very long scholar on these issues. He said, oh, Al-Qaeda doesn't matter anymore. It is gone, finished. How many attacks have taken place after 9/11, which Al-Qaeda can take credit for? There are really few. So he started a theory that organizations do not matter anymore. Whereas Bruce Hoffman, another big guy in terrorism studies, I think he is the second biggest terrorism scholar, not terrorism scholar. He wrote that no, organizations do matter, because without organizations, I'm giving his ideas in a nutshell, without a robust organization, well organized, cannot, without that, a terrorist group cannot repeat another attack like 9/11. We do not read how much effort has gone into 9/11 attacks, how much effort has gone into East Africa bombings, Nigeria and Tunisia, Somalia, Kenya. How much preparations has gone for in recent days in Mumbai attacks. So without a robust organizations with links to different entities, it is very difficult to carry out a very sophisticated, that's not important, but for my perspective, very impactful terrorist attack in any part of the world. So this thing has gone into a debate. And most probably why terrorist groups lost their organizations, because of the post 9/11 strategies to kill, capture, and destroy. So they got disaggregated, diffused, but then they spread also all over the world. So that is the minus side of that strategy. They spread without any links, and then, as I will show you, they started thinking about a model, new model, or a framework that is called Nizam, in the place of an organization, Tanzim. This guy in the slide is Mustafa Al-Suri. He's not the only person about it, but he wrote a 1600-page book in 2003 explaining why we need extreme decentralization, because law and order response is killing, capturing the leaders and destroying their bases. So we'll become invisible, we'll spread all over the world. I'm not going into the details he wrote because there is no time, but if somebody wants to know about it, there are a lot of writings about it. But we'll be bound together by common aim, common program, and self-education. We'll be ourselves. So that's a very interesting concept. And they actually took idea from from 3 American military officers who wrote a book about it. Not necessarily about Islamic organizations, but they wrote fourth generation warfare. You can call it fourth gen warfare. So in all these things, it is called Nizam La Tanzim. Nizam is framework, not necessarily Tanzim. We don't need an organization. Number of attacks have taken place after 9/11, beginning with or not, we do not know much about it, but in Madrid, train attacks, train bombings in London, number of places taken place without any organizational involvement. Individuals took responsibility unto themselves. They harvested resources from the local conditions, local opportunities, and carried out attacks. This is something very few people didn't understand at the time, but this concept has given rise to something called homegrown terrorists. Homegrown terrorists means homegrown doesn't mean that you are necessarily grown in India and carry out attacks in India. but actually it's like a localized usage of the word, that you are where you are, you take cue and resources, cue from the ideology and resources from local resources which you can harvest or necessarily get hold of, and you carry out attacks. So this homegrown terrorists become a new template for terrorist attacks until ISIS demolished that. ISIS demolished that in 2014 by declaring an Islamic State in places where there is lack of law and governance in Syria and Iraq. All those places they took over, taking advantage of the Arab Spring chaos, and then chaos also in the failure of the international community to reinstall a credible government in Iraq at the least. Iraq soldiers ran away, leaving arms and ammunition into those that group which I called Islamic State of Iraq. So that is the basis. But then that worked for some time. A lot of people have gone and joined Islamic group, Islamic State in Syria and Iraq because of the attractiveness of the concept. I definitely interviewed one gentleman who was going from USA with his two sisters to Iraq. I'm not supposed to give his name. He was intercepted by FBI, and he said, "I'm going to join the Islamic State." And when they asked, we asked, why do you want to join the Islamic State? He said, "No, that's the Islamic State which is close to our heart, and I don't want to pay taxes to this heretic government. Governments like United States, we don't want to pay tax." And the sisters also said the same thing. They said, "We want to solve the Islamic State." So you can imagine what is the basis. What is the basis of all this ideology or all this thinking agitating these guys? And I give it the name of ideology. We all know that when I'm going to talk about radicalization now, you remember that ideology is the key to radicalization. Ideology is the key to radicalization. That's the only thing that matters. Not political grievances. Yes, there are political grievances which these people have been agitating for years, decades. But then they also have come to know that it's not going to be resolved. So they wanted to create an Islamic State where all the people of the world will come and join, so that there will be a huge mass that will exploit the energies of the Ummah, this Muslim community, and create a robust, sustainable Islamic State. And it has some characteristics. Ideology. They use ideology as a message. One is religious transcendence. This is something to highlight God's nature and power, which is wholly independent of material universe. We all do that. As Hindus, we do that. As Christians, we all do that. Inherent in all religions. Christianity, for example, if you are following other religions and also theology as a whole, transcendence is implied by God's omnipresence. God is everywhere. Is Hinduism not telling the same thing? We see God in temples. We see God in stones. We see God in trees. We see God in a number of places. Every particular animal, we see God in those. So that is also present in Hinduism. And God in Hinduism, that is very well codified. Nirguna Brahman. Nirguna Brahman is not supposed to tell that I am a Brahman, I am telling you, but this Brahman is the concept. God without any attributes. He doesn't care about anything. He doesn't have any particular form. He comes as wind. He comes as water. He comes as rain. He comes as whatever. Whatever you see, you will find God in that. Transcendence is absolute. Then Islam, Tawheed. If there is any of you follows Islam, they will understand what this means. Believing and affirming that Allah is one and unique. So if you take these three things together, you will find there is no difference. Ishwar Allah Tera Naam Sabko Sanmati De Bhagwan. Then it's ecastological. Very difficult to pronounce anyway. Forgive me. I was trying 5 times before I came to this class. The theology, religiosity, is concerned with final events of the history of the world or humankind. It's about death, end of the world, or the ultimate destiny of humankind. As Hindus, you must have seen it. From the beginning, I was able to understand and keep sense of arguments and things in my childhood. We know about Kalki Avatar, end of Kali Yuga, era of conflicts, beginning of Satya Yuga, era of truth, and Christianity. Now, few years, this thing is going on. Rapture. Christ will come and take away all the good people from this horrible earth, and they will get good residence in his abode. Islam also talks about end time battles. Thereby, the ISIS or Islamic State introduced the concept that the final battle between good and evil will be fought in Levant. That's why ISIS, one name is Levant. Levant is an area in North Africa. North Africa is not a geographic area, but it's actually a conceptual area, including areas from Africa and Middle East. So they said, and the fight they were carrying on against the Western forces, they called it the final end times battle. So how do we make sense of radicalization? It's very important to know, unless if we are going to win the battle, this battle. There are numerous ways to explain it. And I have seen during my research, I'm writing a book actually on that, that most of the definitions or most of the explanations are based on particular agencies which are doing explanations, they're doing research on that, or particular entities who are involved in this type of research. Like, for example, if New York Police Department was one of the first entities that came out with a definition of radicalization. And they explained it one way that suits their environment. How in America, people are getting radicalized. The Netherlands, their police came out with another type of definition that resonated with the examples of people getting radicalized. In India, we have a number of examples. Everywhere, it's not wrong actually to have different examples, but it's good to put them together and understand what it is. So one is process-based. It has two aspects. One is top-down or bottoms-up. Top-down is like in that radicalization process, there is a external radicalization, like imam, like cleric, like school headmaster, or like Christian supremacy leader, whatever. It comes from the top to the down. So somebody looks for people who are interested in similar ideologies, and then they indoctrinate them. There is another one is called bottoms up. That's something which we call self-radicalization, and which is actually an attribute of homegrown terrorists. There are so many individuals. I can give only one example due to time. There is a guy called Momin Khawaja in Canada. He was a third generation Muslim from Pakistan. His father was a doctor in Canada. They are all Canadian citizens. He did BTech in computer science, and he was earning a lot of money, believe me. Then he suddenly asked himself, I want to know about my religion. And he started without going to anybody, he started looking at the internet. And believe me, at the time, there are so many sources. If you hit what is Islam, for example, you'll find so many websites that will say the wrong position of Islam. That's the critical, what we call fundamentalist aspect of their religion. So he got interested, he went further in, then started communicating with certain individuals and internet who do it like a community-based discussions. And he was trying to, he set up a network with a guy in UK and another in USA to blow up a lot of buildings in USA. So how did he travel that path from being a computer engineer, earning money and being comfortable, to going to that stage where he became a radical and also a potential terrorist? He was, of course, arrested because of his difficulties with his girlfriend, who is a Pakistani girl he wanted to marry, but they had a fight, and she pulled it off to the police officers in Pakistan, and he was arrested. All the three guys were arrested in Canada and also in United States. But my question is that why did he, or how did he went in that path? What actually made it? Nobody instigated him. He just wanted to know what is Islam, and he got the wrong message. And that was because the internet was full of radical websites. That is bottoms up. It's mostly linear and most likely to lead to terrorist attacks. Then there is cause-based. Inevitable if certain core or root conditions are present, like poverty. Believe me, whosoever is telling anything about poverty is a factor in making people radicalized. I can tell you or read out to you a letter written by an Indonesian suicide bomber who was trying to blow up Australian embassy in 2004. He was unsuccessful. But he wrote a letter that I am doing it for my family. What did Kasab say to the police? It is all over the internet. Kasab, one of the terrorists involved in Mumbai attacks, he said, I did it for money. So he is from a poor family. All the other 9 others are also from poor families, particularly deprived sections. They are also into, like for example, criminality, and they wanted to do something extraordinary so that they will come to notice and get money for these people who organize them. But then, if we say that if these conditions are always there, there will be radicalization, will be wrong. Because radicalized predisposition, our interest to become radical can vary in degree and intensity. Nature of reactions to constructed grievances. I say this is my grievance. I want to know more about this and how to mitigate those grievances. I want to kill those people or destroy those people who have put me in these conditions. But then it's not necessarily that what I am feeling or expressing myself is going to express with someone else. Because socio-political contexts vary. Everywhere. India is not Indonesia. Indonesia is not Pakistan. Pakistan is not Syria or Iraq. So we should not generalize those things. And basically, in respect to external stimuli, how this message is propagated across the world. I have an example. I was doing a project with Singapore Prime Minister's office, looking at the jihadi websites at the time when radical websites are just coming up in Southeast Asia. So I was supervising a project which actually contrasted the message in Arabic websites and also in Southeast Asian websites. I'll just make it short. Initially, for 2-3 months, I saw the narratives are same. They're talking about Iraq war. They're talking about occupation of Afghanistan. Suddenly, after 2-3 months, it changed. They started talking about Indonesia. They started talking about Malaysia. They started talking about Singapore arm twisting Malaysia. They started talking about Southern Thailand. Why did this happen? Because people will like to relate their grievances to the local conditions. I know any Muslim will say, mostly, it has been repeatedly ascertained that many Muslims believe that there should be a Palestine state. Obviously, it's in their heart. But then reference for that particular objective is not necessarily same all over the world. People will be happy, people will be dancing, people will be celebrating, definitely, if there is a separate Palestine state. But this is not necessarily that degree of acceptance of those grievances will be same everywhere in the world. And that is called something called in international relations theory is called localization. Because all the grievances, all the messages that comes from outside, all the stimuli that comes from outside, gets localized because of local culture, identities, and values, and also social, political, and systemic filters. This I'm not going to explain now because I don't have time, but you can, if you want to know, what are the systemic failures, like constitutional arrangements. Uh, One thing I can tell you that India is one of the few countries in the world where the head of the state can be a Muslim. Cricket captain can be a Muslim. Film stars, Muslims. So what is the grievance? Can they justify there is a grievance? I do not believe so. It's being manipulated. But then I will not go into those controversies now. So because this I can skip. That's why we have seen arguments like global and local objectives and far and near enemy. In many countries, when in Indonesia, there was large-scale terrorist attacks starting from 2000, not 2002 Bali bombings. We saw that they are targeting only far enemies for global causes. Far enemies like USA, Australia, Singapore, and other. Bali bombing was entirely directed against Australians or Singaporeans. Other people got killed, but then that was the thing. But then afterwards, 2008 onwards, they started targeting the local people, like the president of Indonesia at that time. So it seems that people get definitely we are not, we cannot expect that people are fools and we can keep telling them that this is what and they will believe it for eternity. It's not. So that's actually the most important thing that we need to remember and probably exploit to prevent our own people becoming radicalized. Why? What is the reason for you to be radicalized? As I said, in India, opportunities are immense. Constitutional provisions are broad and very opaque, very straightforward. So there is no, poverty is there in other communities, poverty is there in Hindu communities also. If we talk about Hindu and nationalism and other things, I don't believe that. Anyway, so what we are having here, I want to conclude it quickly so that we will have questions. In ground reality, 1990s to 2014, Al-Qaeda dominance that I mentioned to you. Now Al-Qaeda and ISIS are competing for leadership of the Muslim world, especially after ISIS was rooted out of Syria and Iraq. And then Al-Qaeda also, Al-Qaeda's statement about Indian subcontinent to raise the flag of jihad, it was return the Islamic rule, and all these things are just to compete with Islamic State to for the leadership of the Islamic world. ISIS is doing what? It's gone. It has no territorial possessions. And I have argued in my article that I mentioned to you that it is very difficult for a terrorist group to maintain a formal organization as a physical space because it will be taken out. And that happened in ISIS case. It took time because nobody knew whose boots will be on the ground. There's very hypocritical argument. Americans were not interested to put their boots in the ground until it was too late. But then they did it. They did it and they threw them out. And anywhere you have an identifiable organization, the groups, not you, the groups, they will be taken out. Only thing that can keep you running, ISIS is doing through layers, something like all branches, like in Afghanistan, in India, or in the Philippines. What is happening? Who are the members of the wilayats? They are local people who have taken to the ideology of ISIS. They are not necessarily came from, there is not a group actually which is very cohesive as Al-Qaeda for ISIS. This is a matter of debate, of course, but we can talk about it later on. Now both reduced in terms of strength, ability, resources, outreach, but it is happening in our neighborhoods, in our own country. Zawahiri, he is the leader of Al-Qaeda now. He declared Al-Qaeda in Indian subcontinent and to do this thing which is actually not new necessarily. His idea is to reinforce Al-Qaeda's relationship with Taliban and try to assume the leadership of the global jihadist movement vis-a-vis ISIS. But that was there already. Hafiz Syed, you must be very familiar with his name. A long time back, he has advocated for, that's in actually Lashkar-e-Toiba's constitutional charter, Ghazi-Hind, that encompasses Bangladesh, India, Bhutan, Sri Lanka, and all the other, sorry, Bangladesh, of course, in India, Sri Lanka, and all other countries in Afghanistan and Pakistan. So there are certain groups like Indian Mujahideen, JMB and Hizbut Tahrir in Bangladesh, Jamaatul Bangladesh, Jamaatul Mujahideen Bangladesh, TTP in Pakistan, Taliban and others in Afghanistan, Sri Lanka and Maldives. Number of groups have taken into those ideologies, and that is why we are, though not it is strategically very disturbing, but definitely annoying and irritating activities of those groups. So I want to tell you something about this new development. I think you will all like it, but I have not done much research. I've just written an article on this. How is pandemic helping radicalization? It's a plus and a minus. Most groups view pandemic as an opportunity, but recruitment activities has reduced in open and other offline settings, because it's not possible when the cities are closed totally, shutdowns. You cannot sit down together and start preaching in any mosque or in school. So it reduced, and also any offline setting like in rallies or in prayer meetings. So it reduced. But the groups started misusing, or rather, what I say is taking the cue that due to the failure of the leaders that we are having this pandemic. But also, so it has led to very overall reduction in terrorist activities in many areas. It's an opportunity to the extent that consequences of preventive measures like lockdowns reduce the activities of many groups, but they exploit moderate political protests or movements to spread extremist narratives, expand support base, recruit new members. How? By recruiting from online. So these are some of the instances. I'm not going to go into details into it. This one I'm going to skip it also. But new ways of financing. You have seen how the exploitation of the internet for criminal appropriation of money has increased. Ransomware, artificial intelligence, cryptocurrency, and all these things, and frauds, all these credit card frauds. So all these things is increased. So this is where we are now, but we do not know how to make sense of it, because we need to do more research on that side of the, because it may be a good thing or it may be a bad thing. So finally, my argument is Al-Qaeda brand of global jihad or ISIS Islamic State concept have differing resonance in our part of the world. I'm talking about our part of the world, South Asia. Al-Qaeda brand of jihad has gone beyond sell-by date period. You've seen expiry date. Al-Qaeda is going to have a lot of difficulties in selling its ideology. And I can explain to you whether you are convinced or not. ISIS could have immediate appeal, but these would have a short shelf life. Like, again, I'm coming back to the good product and the self. It will say sell before this date. Okay. So we need to remain vigilant about other entities like Muslim Brotherhood and other local surrogates who are trying to take over the mantle of mobility in the Islamic world, in this part of the world. Okay, I'll stop here. Or you want to know this? I'll talk about it in question and answer. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Acharya. And I open the session for question answers, and I will ask the participants to uh, ask questions to Dr. Acharya. Please go ahead.
So please do identify yourself, and it will be happy to address you in a more dynamic way.
Good evening, sir. My name is Pranjala, and I'm a student of International Relations at Jawaharlal Nehru University. Sir, as you have mentioned that most of the religions convey the same principles about humanity or peace, but then on the other hand, we are seeing increased radicalization and terrorist activities in which religion seems to play a major role. So can we say that representatives or messengers of different religions but not able to convey the underlying principle of their religion in the way they could have been? So my question is this.
Yes, that is the question.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so if I understood it correctly, you are telling that why the so-called leaders of particular religious groups are not able to convince or keeping people away from radicalism. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, okay. So that's actually is extremely difficult to explain, but very simple answer will be, when we have any group activities, there is a sense of belongingness. When people get, which attracts people to join a particular group, it may be a religious group, it may be a social group, it may be a political group, or it may be a just group or firm. Why do I do that? If I have some, maybe I'm interest to join activities, cricket club or something, I do that. If I have some grievances that certain societies were unjust to me, or I have been harmed really or perceptually, I can also find somebody, some others who can actually help me understand that and also mitigate my sense of feeling frustrated about my own society or my things. Similarly, number of reasons can be there. So that is why we are studying radicalism. But it's a process, or is a just cause-based. Something happens and I join a politically activist violent group. So it is extremely difficult. We cannot generalize it. I cannot say why these leaders. Are you not sure that few years back, some very frontline Muslim organizations in India, I don't want to name it because I'm just don't want to annoy anybody. They were in the forefront to say no, Islam is not this type of religion, Islam is not that type of religion, it's all Muslim phobia, Islamic phobia, or whatever. But then we have seen it also went on and on and on. And then that persuasiveness might have received jolts or negative activity. A similar thing is happening also in the Christian world. Look at rise of Christian supremacists in Europe and America. You can believe that many, according to your statistics, many people are killed. Violence is more prone by Christian supremacist groups than Muslim groups. If I put that argument upside down, again, according to another statistics, Muslims are the largest victim of Muslim violence. Why should they kill their own people? Are they just collateral damage? No. In many cases, they kill their own people. What happened to why the ISIS and its leader lost legitimacy among the people? They actually exploited, plundered, raped, misused their women. That's why they lost their legitimacy. In a number of cases, I at least have interviewed 2-3 women in Indonesia when they came back to Indonesia. And they said that, oh, all we thought is going to be in a peaceful state of affairs, but now we see everybody tried to take advantage of us. I just want to stop there because I don't want to say what they did to them. So they lost their legitimacy to convince the people after some time when they interacted at a close distance that this is better than what traditional government agencies are promising you. So that's why they might have lost their arguments. even with the, there was something I read a long time back, of course, when I was writing a book on 10 years after 9/11. A Muslim scholar, very prominent Muslim scholar, he wrote that among the Muslim world, in the Muslim world, more people are angry with Osama bin Laden. They like him, but they don't want him to rule. So all these things, there is a book written by, published by West Point School, American Training College in USA Army Training College, stealing the playbook from Al Qaeda. And they're all writing that we must make the argument upside down. You understand? So I'm not sure whether I'm explaining your question very clearly or in a systematic manner, but then it is a very difficult question to answer. Because there is no one answer to it. There is no straightforward answer to it. If we know that, we could have actually got rid of this phenomenon. Is that okay?
Okay, sir, that helps a lot. Thank you, sir.
Yes, next.
Good evening, sir.
Yes, okay.
Yeah, good evening, sir. Sir, first of all, thank you for your session. It was very insightful. Sir, so you mentioned that there has
Introduce
been...
yourself. Introduce yourself.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sorry, sir. Sir, my name is Gargi Prabhashini, and I am pursuing Masters in South Asian Studies from Pondicherry University.
Oh.
Sir, so can I proceed with the question?
Yes, please.
Yes. So you mentioned during your explanation that there has been reduction in the strength of the terrorist organizations during the pandemic. But at the same time, we saw that Taliban took over Afghanistan. So how do you think, I have two questions, like how do you think this is going to affect the psyche of the terrorist organizations? And how is it going to affect South Asia as a region, which is already not much of, which is a fragile region, you can say. So what is your opinion regarding this?
Yeah, that's again a very interesting question. And again, I should tell you that why there is first of all, probably you and me will be the only persons to say Taliban is a terrorist organization. USA was doing that. Number of European countries were doing that, but they caved into Taliban, and now can you tell it a terrorist organization? And it's not now. It was also when these countries were fighting Taliban. They were never telling them terrorist organizations. I have been actually with, I was teaching National Defense University, where I used to teach special forces, US special forces. They are the ones who fight in Afghanistan. They are the forces who fight in Iraq and Syria. But they call it insurgency. And I have a hell of a time to explain, to convince them why it is not an insurgency. There is a clear and defined code of conduct for groups to be called insurgencies. And none of them applies to Taliban. Why should we call Afghan insurgency, Taliban insurgents, Iraq insurgents? You understand how hypocritical the world is. So maybe you are calling them terrorists, and now since it happened in Nepal also, the Maoist groups. They were terrorists, and once they took power, they were not terrorists. It happened with Hamas, but in Hamas case, there is definitely a hypocritic attitude about the world community. They don't call them insurgents. Why not? They are ruling Hezbollah. Hezbollah, is it a terrorist group or insurgent group? It was large-scale violence associated with Hezbollah, especially against the Americans. So world is a place of hypocrisy. We deal with groups as we think is good for the timing, the time and space context. So I would say that, okay, let's leave it aside. I would still call Taliban a terrorist group. And then I will say that it's not necessarily its power has increased as an organization, but the power and organizational capability of the response community, like the international society, Afghan government, Afghan national forces has decreased, denounced. Can we think that way? That's my answer.
Yes, sir.
No, you are not satisfied. No, you can tell something. No, what you think is that answer should be.
So first you said, so what you said, I totally agree with you. But actually, people, it happens in international relations that first, what you said, time and context to use and when to throw it. But then again, you later on said that it is actually a terrorist organization. You'd still call it a terrorist organization. So you already answered what I had in mind. And
Yeah,
yes,
yeah. No, let me just tell you. When I said decline of the terrorist organization, I told that in a particular context. Definitely after 9/11, with a very pronounced worldwide interest, number of countries come together to destroy those groups, and this is called decapitation strategy. If you're a defense student, you will know what is decapitation. It's basically simple. One is kill and capture, and I say three stages of that: gates, guns, and guards. First stage. Second stage is like killing them on the ground, destroy their organizations, arrest them, and destroy their financial and other supporters, logistical supporters. But third is very important, which we have not done, and nobody has done even after 20 years of, more than 20 years of 9/11. That is destroy the environment that creates terrorists, help them to sustain. That is actually like, having de-radicalization programs, which I was leading in Singapore until I was in Singapore until 2013. We call it counter ideology programs. It was very successful, not successful, I say, impactful. We did it in, we spread it to Indonesia, Malaysia, Iraq, Syria, Jordan, Pakistan, Afghanistan, everywhere we did it. That's called counter ideology, and that program was based on this idea that somebody has got into some wrong or inaccurate interpretation of religion. We used to take imams and prominent imams for that, scholars from Egypt, Malaysia, and others with us. They will engage in debates with them and try to counter the thoughts that has been instilled into them when they become radicals. And it has been successful in some cases, it has not been successful in many cases. That is a different idea, but that was one of the things which we are not doing. We are not doing something called terrorist financing. I actually wrote my PhD on terrorist financing. And I am one of the most unhappy person in the world. Nobody cares. In our neighborhood, Pakistan doesn't care. What can I just tell us about our country also? I'm not sure whether our country is perfectly. We just okay. The international entities like FATF, they impose some guidelines, standards. We are just trying to tick off the boxes. Many countries, I'm not telling about only India or Pakistan, the USA also has failed in this respect. If they continue to get money, they will continue to get stronger than more. Second is legislation. In many countries, laws are so weak that they are not able to deal with the terrorist threat properly. Number of countries, Indonesia, Philippines, many countries in European countries, they don't like actually to go after terrorist organizations just because somebody else is calling them terrorists. I'll give you one example, you'll understand. The United Nations made a rule in 2001, it's resolution 1373, to create a list of terrorists and their supporters. I just ask you, Gargi, because I am talking to you. In your imagination, how many terrorists will be there in the world today? Like Taliban, if you take as a terrorist organization, it's quite enough. Just guess how many.
So I do not have.
That's me. No, I'm telling you, it is definitely more than 870 unique entities in the list. So according to United Nations, according to USA, according to UK, according to European Union, there are only around 9 to 1,000 terrorists in the world, whose names are listed in that list, whose properties are confiscated. So can you tell me where we are? isn't it?
Yes, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir, next question, please.
Yes, sir. Good evening, sir. My name is Yashvi, and I'm a final year BA student studying economics and sociology from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. So, my question is specifically regarding South Asia. So, talking about the Easter bombings in Sri Lanka. So, several reports say that Indian intelligence had informed Sri Lankan intelligence about the attack well in advance, but the intelligence team did not take any step to counter the attack, like to prevent the attack. So, then how do you think Indian intelligence and Sri Lankan intelligence need to cooperate to ensure the security of the region, and not just India and Sri Lanka, but South Asia as a continent as a whole? How important is it for India to have good relations, specifically in the domain of intelligence sector, to ensure security of the South Asia in the near future?
Yeah, thanks. You have asked me a very question is very sensitive to me because my latest article is about Easter Sunday bombings and jihad in Sri Lanka. And believe me, it got rejected by many journals, including IDSA, because for different reasons. Of course, I have never seen that happening to me. I usually get published. But then, basically, nobody was admitting that Sri Lanka is on the throes of a Islamic extremist violence, including my own close. I used to work under a Sri Lankan expert, and he said, when I asked him, "Do you know is there a Muslim Brotherhood in Sri Lanka?" He said no, clearly. But believe me, I don't know about others. I have done a lot of research on Muslim Brotherhood with the Canadian Intelligence Agency, CMP. They have come to brief Indian government that Islamic Brotherhood threat is increasing in India in number of places, especially in South India. And there are a lot of evidence for that, which I cannot share. So when I wrote about this, that is getting complex. I didn't say that these people are radicalized or getting this thing. Who are the people who got involved in Sri Lankan attacks? ISIS didn't come there. They're not ISIS members, but they went to see ISIS members. They went to see Muslim Brotherhood leaders in Qatar and other places. So why don't we admit that we have a problem? And we have done it ourselves also. Let's not blame Sri Lanka alone. And Sri Lanka and India were actually having a honeymoon and hate relationship for a long time. Sometimes they lean towards China, sometimes they lean towards Pakistan, and India doesn't want to give them some money for some projects, they will go to China for the projects. So it is very difficult. Believe me, I am a very good friend of Sri Lanka. I have no animosity for the government or others. I know the president personally, and his two of his one nephew and niece were my students in Sri Lanka. And one of them was also in India, first secretary in Indian High Commission. So I'm not telling that. When I actually started throwing this idea to people, everybody was like negative, not no. Yes. Any other second question from you on this?
So
you can read my article. I will send you if you send me your email. Yes, I can send you the article, and you can actually cut me off. That's no, that's not correct.
So actually, we lost you in the last bit. So could you repeat what were you saying?
Oh, okay. Where did you lose me? I didn't want to go to that question again, but I said I wrote an article on Sri Lanka recently. That is my one of the latest publications. Easter Sunday bombings and jihad in Sri Lanka. Okay.
So,
and when I was trying to publish it, number of people actually were trying to throw it away, reviewers. Usually we don't publish like this. It goes to a lot of review processes, journals and others, and they threw me out because they said, no, it's not correct. There is no extremism, question of jihad in Sri Lanka mostly. And most specifically, I was arguing about, I was trying to say that it's not, what we saw in Sri Lanka is just not a, I argued that basically that it is a unique dynamic where a number of different groups, and basically what your previous student asked me, number of groups, because they are not able to carry out large-scale attacks on their own, they are cooperating with among themselves. And these groups are ideologically different. Like Muslim Brotherhood is different from ISIS. Hezbollah is different from Al-Qaeda and ISIS. So a number of different groups are networking that is happening all over the world. And that is argued and defended by Zawahiri, who is the leader of Al-Qaeda. During 2006, when Israel invaded Lebanon, Zawahiri asked the Muslims, irrespective of caste or creed, Shia or Sunni, to go in support of them, Hezbollah. And he was criticized heavily. Then he came back that I am making a distinction between Shias. Al-Qaeda, as you know, is a Sunni group. I am making a distinction between Shias who are fighting against the Crusaders, like, and then invaders, USA and Israel, and between people in Iraq who are supporting the government, Iraqi government, who are Shias. So you can see that it's not absolute division in ideology or in action. Terrorist groups do come together, irrespective of those things, to work against their common enemies. For the Muslim world, common enemies are, as they perceive it, USA, Israel, and USA-led coalitions. So it is going to serve their purpose, they do it, and I use that Sri Lankan example with evidence, of course. I have read what the question you said me. Indian government, as Indian intel officers have warned them about it, but they warn about it due to their connections with Muslim Brotherhood, and that came from Kerala and basically Tamil Nadu areas. But then Sri Lanka didn't take heed of it. That's correct. You have said the correct thing. But I am telling you why they have done, because I don't want to take your advice about it. I know what I am doing. By that time, the president himself, Gotabaya, was already in defending the Muslims' anger or these things in public.
Yes, sir. I mean, I definitely agree with you. But, sir, in hindsight, this isn't a healthy practice, right? If we want to ensure security of South Asian countries, and countries need to cooperate, and the intelligence agencies need to have trust with each other, and countries need to act if such information is provided.
Yeah, Swe, that's what actually I didn't show you. Where is cooperation? Where is SARC? Have they actually really believed in doing anything together? Or will they do together? Every time they want to do together, somebody, either one country or other, will throw them out or pull their legs, basically. But then that is another chapter, another discussion. Why there is no cooperation among Southeast Asian countries, which is definitely lower than Southeast Asian countries or even Shanghai Cooperation Organization. Why? It is because there are a lot of factors. I think Dr. Mahendra will be knowing better than me, but then we can discuss that in another session.
Sure, sir.
That is actually most important for diplomats, people who want to be diplomats.
Thank you, sir. Sir, could you share your email ID?
Yes, I think Dr. Gaur can send. I don't know your email.
No,
Arabinda Acharya, my full name.
I will do the needful. Don't worry.
Okay, thank you, sir. Thank you so much for the session.
gmail.com.
No, I will do it. Don't worry.
Thank you, sir. Any other questions?
Yes, come on.
So I will ask questions now.
No, sir. Today I am your student and I will ask you a question.
Sir, please.
Sir, Dr. Acharya, I mean, every now and then we read in the newspaper, see in the TV channel about the sleeper groups in India being active in some part of the other country. So, what exactly the role of sleepers in the terrorist activities and all that? I mean, what is the root cause? Is it the poverty or is it the religious beliefs and all that, or anything else?
Yeah, I can, first of all, I must tell you the sleeper